You're on Long Final, Ireland's aviation podcast from Squawk 7000.
Colin Wright, thanks for joining us on Squawk 7000. A trip to Birr, I couldn't lose the opportunity to have it to find out a little bit more about the history of Birr as an airfield, because it's been around for a while.
It has. I mean, as I said, we think we're somewhere between 49 and 50 years. I can't be exact on that, but our airfield has been there that long. I mean, there was a military base in Birr as well, which was literally over the hill at Grant Engineering, and the man who owned our airfield originally has passed away since, was Paddy Corby. And Paddy was a gunner in the RAF in World War II. And we know one of his dying wishes were that the Ormonde Flying Club would remain on the site, and true to his word, it has. And we have a new landlord now, but we have a great relationship with him, and the airfield will remain for as long as we see fit, or we can afford to stay flying.
Now, what's interesting is obviously people will, if they don't know about the club itself, they certainly know about the fly-ins and the air shows. Yeah. Who set up that whole legacy of the air shows, and where did that start? So
the air shows was, I suppose, I don't really want to take credit for it, but it was my brainchild. And then Dave Corby and Tom Rafter fell in behind me to help me with this. And so the three of us formed Birr Air Display. So back in 2009 or 2010, we had a high-end fly-in, and we brought in Dave Bruton actually, and we had some cars drive up the avenue and stayed for the day, and they got very interested in all the aircraft that were after flying in for the fly-in. And so after that day, we sat down and we said, you know what, let's have a crack at this again and see if we can do something else with it. So we developed it from there. And it has grown and grown and grown. And so, yeah, I mean, 2 years ago, because of COVID, would have been our 10th year running Birr as Birr Air Display. So hopefully next year we will get to run the 10th air show, and we'll continue to grow.
What are the logistics of putting an air show together? Does it actually take the whole year?
So our air show happens on the bank holiday, Monday in August, every year. And we will take September off and start planning again in October for the following year. I mean, you know what your experience with Bray Air Display and Shay. Some people think you can put these things on together overnight, but it's not the case. It takes months and months of work. So by the time you try and tie down acts, I mean, you're always looking for the better act every year. Not that there's anything wrong with the acts we have, but you're always trying to get better and better. And I suppose the last air show, I mean, my dream was always to have a P-51 Mustang. And luckily Shay for Bray secured one, and we tagged in off the back of that, and I had my dream aircraft at our last air show. So we had the P-51 fly over Birr, and it was so that was the highlight of the air shows to date for me, to have that aircraft. But we will continue to strive and try and get better and better as years go on, providing Dave and Tom want to roll in and still continue to do this, So I have to talk to those guys now about this going forward. But I think that the general feel is that we stay going.
It is fascinating, isn't it, that there's still such a love of aviation, even amongst the general public, for an air show.
You're correct. I mean, we all know aircraft because we deal with them every day, but come in and look at these things and they're fascinated with them. And in some ways, I'm envious of that. I really am, because we take it for granted because we're around airplanes week on every week, but these people, I see their faces when they come in and they look at the aircraft and they're just completely mesmerised by them, and I really am jealous of that, because I miss that feeling that you were so into aircraft as a kid. I mean, I used to look up when I was a child going, someday I hope to be up there, and your love of aviation.
Tell me more about that. When did you first get an interest in it?
So in school, my mother made me aware of this for my first class in primary school. We had a school project and mine was on airplanes. Now, I didn't remember this, okay, but it was on airplanes. And then I suppose I was always looking at airplanes. I'd look at magazines of airplanes everywhere we go. When my parents would take us on holidays, I always wanted to sit at the window on the airplane to look out. And luckily back then as a kid, you were always able to get into the cockpit. I think terrorists have taken that away from us all. That, you know, you could stroll up into a cockpit and be fascinated with what was going on up there. I got a job in Leixlip in Kildare when I was 20 years of age, and I moved up there. I went working for a sound and lighting company in Leixlip, and obviously Weston is right beside Leixlip. And I used to drive out to Weston on a Sunday morning and just sit there and watch the aircraft take off. I couldn't afford to do a flight lesson because I was so young and I wasn't earning a lot of money back then. And not that it's expensive to do now, it's not really. But yeah, that was. And then when I moved home, I came across Birr. I live in Roscrea, but I came across Birr, and I went over there one Sunday morning, and I met a guy called Gordon Hendrick, and Gordon took me up for a spin, and I signed up straight away, and that's 16 years later. I have a pilot's license, and I think it's great. You know,
we always ask on Squawk 7000 about people's logbooks and some of the flights. So the obvious one is your first flight, you've told us. What was your first solo like?
My first solo, I actually sang "Fly Me to the Moon" as I was doing my first solo. It was on the 11th of November.
Way too relaxed.
I was actually so buzzed about it. And another claim to fame I have, I went solo in 6 hours and 15 minutes, and I let everybody know that because I'm so chuffed with that one, you know. Took me a while to get the exams over the line, but I got solo in 6 hours and 15 minutes, and I actually sang "Fly Me to the Moon" as I was going around the circuit. I was so relaxed, and I came out of it and I was buzzing for a week after it. And again, 15, 16 years later, I still remember that day like it was yesterday. And you tell every student that, every new student that comes to Birr to learn to fly, I love going back there with them because I know what it feels like to be at that stage of your flying, which is great.
You could do an entire podcast just on people's first solos. I think it's one of those things that sticks in somebody's mind.
Absolutely. I mean, you hear the stories. I'm sure you remember yours like it was yesterday. We all do. We all do. And it is something you could do a podcast on someday, you know, so...
Next flight then would be the one which might be best forgotten.
The best forgotten flight. Do I really want to mention that one? When I got a piece of dirt stuck in a jet in a carburetor. That was an interesting flight. But yeah, other than that, I mean, I've had some fantastic experiences, and you know, we've often taken a spin to the likes of Haverfordwest for breakfast, and you tell people these stories, the non-flyers, you tell these stories and they look at you like you've two heads. You know, you went to England for breakfast. Yeah, we did. It was great crack. And we made it, and we were back and forth, and we do that quite regularly. But memorable flights, I've no real bad memories apart from that
Hiccup.
Yeah. Other than that, no. Every time I go up in the air, I feel it sets me free, and any stress you might have is gone. When you get up in the air, it's just gone.
Did you ever think of it as a professional career?
I haven't the intelligence for it to be a professional career for me. I struggled to get the exams with the PPL, but yes, absolutely. I do regret it that I didn't do it when I was younger. My daughter is now at that stage, so she's getting her PPL and she's going to go on and become a commercial pilot, we hope. But yeah, I'd love to have done it for a period to see what it was like, you know. Yeah,
interesting that it does actually now pass down through the family.
It's amazing. Yeah, I mean, she's been coming flying with me since she was 7 years of age. And my son is 10 now, and he took his first flight at 1 with me. I suppose when it gets into the house, it becomes an addiction for everybody, because when you get into aviation, it's very hard to get away from it. Very, very hard.
Tell us more about the club then, the Ormonde Club.
So the club exists of 50 to 55 members, and we're a training facility in the Midlands of Ireland. So we have a Group A Cessna 172, and we have a Eurostar EV97. Microlight class or national license, you know, for the people out there that look down on the microlighters. Great little airplane, don't knock it. So yeah, we do Group A training. We have an instructor panel of four instructors, 2 aircraft, and we train 7 days a week, and we have been doing that for, God, way longer than I've been in the club. I don't actually know how long we've been training for, but it's been there as long as I can remember. And
what about activities then for the club as well? You mentioned obviously, you know, the £100 breakfasts or whatever they've been referred to. I think the Americans call them the $100 burgers.
Yes. Well, I'm not quite sure we get away with a €100 breakfast, but we do a lot of fly-ins or fly-outs every year, and then I suppose we're famous for, normally pre-COVID, we would normally open the flying season with our breakfast fly-in in April, and we would finish off the season then in September with another breakfast fly-in. So this year, we will, on the 5th of September, Sunday the 5th of September, we will have a breakfast fly-in, and it'll be our first one in 2 years because of COVID. So we're looking forward to that because we love people flying into Birr. We really do. We don't charge a landing fee. The kettle is always on. Anyone from any part of the country is welcome in to have a cup of tea in Birr. But we always tell people, bring your own biscuits and we'll supply the tea.
And good biscuits now, not the cheap ones.
Yeah, no custard creams to us. You know, we want Mikados and Swiss rolls, that sort of stuff.
What is the actual mechanic of a breakfast fly-in? Because it sounds like a really romantic idea. I've been to one, obviously, and it's a great idea. But for somebody listening to us on the podcast today thinking, God, that might be a nice place to bring my aeroplane. An early morning, obviously.
So we normally start the breakfast at 10 a.m. and
very civilised.
It is very civilised because we give guys on a Sunday morning time to get up out of bed. We all work hard during the week, and it's nice to have a little bit of a lie-in on a Sunday morning. So we'd start at 10 a.m. and we have the breakfast, and sure, guys will stay there till 3 or 4 o'clock in the day, and we're all, I suppose, talking nonsense about how big is your GPS and and your speedometer, you know. But yeah, it's a great place to come. We have plenty of places to park airplanes. We have a 600-metre runway. It's 40 metres wide. So you have loads of room to make mistakes and get away with it. But yeah, it's for some reason it's always a great place to come, and the camaraderie and the bit of crack that goes on amongst guys is great, you know.
I'm also thinking about the possibility of the return of the air show next year.
The long-returned air show, yeah. I mean, Dave, Tom and myself, I suppose, we sit down. We will sit down in the coming weeks and decide whether we're going to go ahead next year or not, because Dave is very committed with work, Tom is committed, so am I, and the time it takes to do this is just, it's even thinking about it makes me tired, you know. But because of our love for aviation, and to be able to deliver something like this in the centre of Ireland is just great. The viewing point, I mean, Bray is a phenomenal air show. I'm not trying to take from that for a second, but it doesn't have what we have, whereas the crowd are parked, the planes are parked beside the crowd. They get to meet the pilots. I do a pilot parade every year as well, and the pilots love this. It heightens their ego, and I think I get a better display out of them when they go up. So, but they love it. They love mingling with the crowd, and so yeah, we have something pretty unique within the air show in Birr. So I hope the guys will come on board and we'll go do it again, and we'll see what happens.
You talked there about being, you know, the commentary and the pilot parade, and I was only looking back at a video of it of the last show there, and there they are all out there shaking hands. And
yes.
It's what else is part of your mix for being an air show commentator?
Well, I used to DJ in a past life, and I suppose that's where, as Dave Corby does say to me, and I do always bring this back to haunt him. He says, you know, you're the rock star in this. Nobody ever remembers the bass player, and Dave classes himself as the bass player in the band, right? But it's not the way it just happened that way, that I was the one picked up the microphone and start talking. And you know, I used to entertain as a DJ, as you know yourself, and I suppose I bring a little bit of that into the role when we're trying to commentate on airplanes. I mean, I don't want to bore people to death with the horsepower of an airplane or how many G's it can pull. You'll always tell them all that, but I'm not sure people are interested in hearing all that.
Well, the people who are interested in that usually already know.
Correct.
Yeah.
And the punters coming in just want to see planes go upside down, and as people would say to me, is that plane going to do a loop-the-loop?
Or does she use much diesel?
Yeah, so you do get a bit of that, but to be able to meet the public and see their faces when the aircraft are doing their thing, I think it's fantastic. I just love it. And kids, you see the kids' faces as well, and they're so amazing. And I mean, I remember one year the Coast Guard came in, and this sticks out in my mind so much about the air show. I would always pick a kid out of the crowd, because we would get a cake for the guys in the Coast Guard helicopter, and just give them a cake, thank them for coming up, because obviously they don't charge their service to do that, and it's fantastic. So I would always have a cake, and I'd pick a kid out of the crowd to come and give the cake to the winchman when he'd come down, and he'd take the cake back up, and it's a great spectacle. But this particular year, there was this little girl had her hand up in the audience, and I went, yeah, you come on out here. And as it turned out, she was an amputee. And I didn't know that, you know. And I was going, oh my God, how is this kid going to carry this cake, or how am I going to work this? But I felt so good, because I had picked this little kid, and she was just buzzing because she got picked out of the crowd, and she went over with the cake under her arm, and the winchman bent down to her and took the cake off her and tapped her on the shoulder. And, you know, she went back and her parents came out and thanked me, and I didn't plan it. It just happened accidentally, and that was one of my high points of that whole air show over the years.
As you say, it's about making memories for people.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, it was fantastic, and I know she went away really, really happy. But like you do when the pilots are like rock stars on the day. They really, really are. You know, Team Ravens come over from England, and they always tell me it's one of the best air shows that they ever go to, and it's for that reason that they're so close to the audience, which is great.
We were joking before, as we sat down. I said, do you have a brother? And then I could get to interview the Wright brothers. But they then told me a story about Oshkosh.
Yeah, we went to Oshkosh many years ago as a club trip. So a gang of us, 11 or 12 of us from the club, went to Oshkosh. And Oshkosh have a lovely museum, and they have all this historical aircraft inside. And it's a fantastic place to go. If the guys that are listening or girls that are listening haven't been, you should make a trip. It's really, really good. So the Wright Flyer is actually situated inside in the Oshkosh Museum. So I got the guys took a photograph of me, and it was captioned then, the right here's Wright beside the Wright Flyer. And it kind of did the rounds when it came back, and there was a bit of a stick over that for a while. I
was just thinking too about, you know, you as somebody involved in air shows, being at an air show. Did you enjoy it?
Absolutely loved it. I really did. Oshkosh do it on another level. I mean, the year we were there, they did a reenactment of the Pearl Harbor attack, and it was just mind-blowing. And even to the point where all the Americans got up and put the hand on the chest when the Americans were going bombing Japan. I mean, you know, it wasn't real. It was just something that... But there was this big explosion took place on the runway. Like, they dropped this bomb... it was so, and we could feel the heat a mile away from the runway. It was just amazing. And there was P-51s and the Japanese airplanes. They were all doing this firefly thing in the sky. It was just phenomenal. But they do things on such a huge scale. But then these planes are parked on the tarmac, and you can get up and get into the cockpit, get a photograph in them, meet the pilots that are flying them. It's an incredible place. Incredible.
Okay, you mentioned the Mustang being one of the highlights of Birr. What else is on your wish list?
I don't really have another one, believe it or not. Ever since I was a kid, the P-51 it's always been the one for me. Yeah, obviously I'd love to get a spin in an F-16 or something like that, but I doubt that'll ever happen. Yeah, P-51 is the one for me. That's it. Yeah.
So, aviation alive and well in Birr, and fly in on the 5th of September, and we'll finish the chat with the beautiful sound of that Mustang flying by. Colin Wright, thanks for joining us on Squawk 7000.
Delighted. Thank you very much.